My name is Charlotte Williams and I'm 34 years old. I never thought a car accident would be the thing that finally opened my eyes to what my marriage really was. But sometimes life has a funny way of showing you the truth when you least expect it. It started like any other day. I woke up at 6:30, made breakfast for my husband Marcus, packed his lunch, ironed his shirt and got myself ready for work. Marcus barely looked up from his phone when I kissed him goodbye. He was already scrolling through his emails, probably planning his day without giving me a second thought. That should have been my first clue about what was coming. I work as a receptionist at a dental practice in the city center. It's not glamorous work, but I like the people I work with and the pay is decent enough. We live in a small house in Solihull that Marcus inherited from his grandmother, so we don't have rent to worry about. Between my salary and the money Marcus makes as an accountant, we should have been comfortable. The problem was that Marcus never saw my money as our money. He saw it as my contribution to the household expenses while his money was his money. I paid for groceries, utilities and my own clothes and car. He paid the council tax and kept the rest for himself. I thought that was normal. I thought that was how marriages worked. The accident happened at 4:15 on a Tuesday afternoon. I was driving home from work, sitting in traffic on the A34, when this massive lorry ran a red light and slammed into the side of my little Corsa. The impact sent my car spinning across 2 lanes of traffic. I remember the sound of metal crunching and glass breaking. I remember the airbag exploding in my face. And then I remember waking up in the back of an ambulance with a paramedic asking me my name. Charlotte Williams, I managed to say, even though my head felt like it was full of cotton wool. That's good, love, the paramedic said. Her name was Sarah and she had kind eyes. You've been in a car accident. We're taking you to the Queen Elizabeth Hospital. Is there someone you'd like us to call? I gave her Marcus's number. He was my husband after all. He was supposed to be the person who would drop everything and rush to the hospital when I needed him. The ambulance ride was a blur of sirens and Sarah checking my pulse and asking me questions to make sure I was staying conscious. My left arm was definitely broken and I had cuts all over my face from the glass. My ribs hurt every time I breathed. When we got to the hospital, they wheeled me straight into the emergency department. The doctor, Dr. Patel, was thorough and gentle. He ordered X-rays and a CT scan to check for internal bleeding. You're very lucky, he told me after reviewing the results. The broken arm is clean, and there's no sign of internal damage. But we need to keep you overnight for observation, and you'll need surgery to set the bone properly. That's when I asked the nurse if anyone had called my husband back. Let me check, she said, looking at her notes. We called the number you gave us, but whoever answered said he was in an important meeting and couldn't be disturbed. I felt like I'd been punched in the stomach. Did you tell them I was in the hospital? Yes, love. We explained that you'd been in a car accident and were being treated for injuries. They said they'd pass the message along. 3 hours passed. I was lying in a hospital bed, hooked up to machines with my arm in a temporary cast, and Marcus hadn't even called back. I tried calling him myself, but it went straight to voicemail. I tried texting him, but he didn't respond. By 8 o'clock that evening, I was starting to panic. The surgery was scheduled for 9 in the morning, and I needed someone to sign consent forms. More than that, I needed someone to care that I was hurt and scared and alone. That's when I called Fiona. Fiona Davies has been my best friend since we were at university together. She's a nurse at a different hospital, so she understood exactly what I was going through. More importantly, she's the kind of person who drops everything when someone she cares about needs help. Charlotte? What's wrong? You sound terrible. I told her everything. The accident, the hospital, Marcus not answering his phone. I'll be there in 20 minutes, she said without hesitation. Don't worry about anything else right now. Just focus on getting better. Fiona arrived with an overnight bag for me, flowers, and a face like thunder when I explained that Marcus still hadn't called back. Have you tried calling his office? She asked. The office is closed. It's past 8. What about his mobile? Goes straight to voicemail. Fiona sat down in the chair next to my bed and took my good hand in hers. Charlotte, I need to ask you something and I need you to be honest with me. When was the last time Marcus made you feel like you were important to him? I opened my mouth to defend him, but then I stopped. When was the last time? When was the last time he asked about my day or told me he loved me, or did something thoughtful just because he wanted to make me smile? I can't remember, I whispered. That's not normal love. That's not how someone treats a person they care about. The next morning I had the surgery to set my broken arm. Fiona stayed with me the whole time, holding my hand while they put me under anesthesia and being the first face I saw when I woke up. Marcus finally showed up at 2:30 in the afternoon, almost 24 hours after the accident. He walked into my hospital room like nothing had happened, carrying a small bunch of flowers from the hospital gift shop and wearing his best, "I'm a good husband" smile. "There's my brave girl," he said, leaning down to kiss my forehead. "How are you feeling?" I stared at him. "Where were you?" "I came as soon as I could. I had that big meeting yesterday with the family about Grand's estate, remember? I couldn't leave in the middle of it. They told you I was in the hospital. They told me you'd had a little accident. I didn't realize it was serious. A little accident. I had a broken arm, 15 stitches in my face and bruised ribs, but it was just a little accident. I needed you," I said quietly. "And I'm here now. That's what matters." Fiona, who had been getting coffee when Marcus arrived, walked back into the room at that moment. She took one look at him and I could see her making an effort to be polite. "You must be Marcus," she said. "I'm Fiona. I've been staying with Charlotte since yesterday evening." "Right, thanks for that. I can take over now." The casual way he dismissed her like she was just some random person who happened to be there made me furious. Fiona had taken time off work, slept in an uncomfortable hospital chair, and held my hand through surgery. She had done everything a loving partner should do. Marcus had bought flowers from the gift shop and expected credit for showing up a day late. "Actually," I said, "I'd like Fiona to stay." Marcus looked surprised. "Why? I'm here now." "Because she's been here when I needed her." For the first time since he'd walked in, Marcus looked uncomfortable. "Charlotte, you're obviously upset. Let's not make a big deal out of this." "Not make a big deal? I was in a car accident. I could have died. And you were too busy to even call me back." I explained about the meeting. "It was important." "More important than me?" Marcus didn't answer that question. He just stood there holding his cheap flowers and looking like he wanted to be anywhere else. That's when I knew my marriage was over. I didn't say anything else that day. I let Marcus think he'd smooth things over. I let him help me get discharged from the hospital and drive me home. I let him make a big show of taking care of me, bringing me tea and adjusting my pillows. But I was planning. The next few days were enlightening. Marcus went back to work in his normal routine like nothing had happened. He expected me to do the same, even though I had a broken arm and was supposed to be resting. "Can you put the washing on?" he asked on Thursday morning. "And maybe pick up some groceries? We're running low on milk." I was sitting on the sofa with my arm in a sling, still taking painkillers, and he wanted me to do the shopping. "I can't drive," I said. "My arm's broken. You can take the bus. It's not that far." That's when I realized he genuinely didn't understand what he'd done wrong. In his mind, he'd shown up at the hospital eventually, so he'd fulfilled his husband duties. Everything else was just normal life carrying on. While he was at work that day, I called Fiona. "I want to leave him," I said. "Good," she said immediately. "I was wondering when you'd figure that out." "I don't know how though. I don't have much money saved up and most of our accounts are joint." "How much money are we talking about?" I'd never really thought about it before. Marcus handled most of our finances. I had my own current account for my salary, but our savings were in joint accounts that he managed. "I think there's about 15,000 in the main savings account," I said. "And maybe 8,000 in the emergency fund." "That's your money too, Charlotte. You've been paying into those accounts for years." He was right. I'd been contributing to our joint savings for the entire 7 years we'd been married. My name was on the accounts. Legally, I had every right to that money. What if I just took it? Took what's legally yours? I don't see a problem with that. Fiona was practical like that. She also had a spare room in her flat and told me I could stay there as long as I needed to. The plan was simple. I would wait until Marcus went to work, transfer the money to a new account in my name only, pack my things and leave. I'd stay with Fiona until I could find my own place. I spent the weekend pretending everything was normal while I researched flats to rent and figured out how to transfer money online. Marcus was so absorbed in his own life that he didn't notice anything different about my behavior. On Monday morning, I watched him eat his breakfast and leave for work like he had every day for 7 years. Then I went straight to our computer and logged into our online banking. The joint savings account had £14,847 in it. The emergency fund had £8,203. There was also a current account with £2,156 that I'd never paid much attention to before. I sat there for a moment looking at all that money. Money that I'd helped save. Money that I'd contributed to with every grocery shop I'd paid for, every utility bill I'd covered, every penny I'd scrimped and saved while Marcus spent his salary on whatever he wanted. I transferred it all to a new account I'd opened online the day before. Every last penny. Then I packed 2 suitcases with my clothes and personal belongings. I didn't take anything that Marcus had bought, nothing that he could claim was his. Just my clothes, my books, my photos, and my grandmother's jewelry. I left my keys on the kitchen table along with a note that said, "Gone to think about our marriage. We'll be in touch." I didn't want him to report me missing or call the police. I just wanted time to get settled before I had to deal with him. Fiona picked me up at noon. We loaded my suitcases into her car and drove to her flat in Moseley. She'd already cleared out her spare room and bought groceries for the week. "How do you feel?" she asked as we carried my bags upstairs. "Terrified," I said honestly. "But also, free." Marcus called that evening when he got home and found my note. I let it go to voicemail. "Charlotte, what the hell is going on? Come home and we'll talk about this. This is ridiculous." He called 6 more times that night. I didn't answer any of them. The next morning he figured out what I'd done with the money. That's when the real phone calls started. "You can't just steal money from our joint account. That's theft." "It's not theft," I said when I finally answered. "My name is on the account. It's my money too. Bring it back right now, Charlotte. I need that money." "For what?" For bills. For the mortgage." "What mortgage?" "The house is paid for." "For living expenses then. You can't just take everything." I took what was mine. I've been paying into those accounts for 7 years. That money was for our future. Our future ended when you decided a family meeting was more important than your wife being in the hospital. Marcus kept calling for days. First he was angry, then he was bargaining, then he was crying. He promised to change, promised to be a better husband, promised to put me first. But I'd already made my decision. I used some of the money to put down a deposit on a small flat in Bourneville. It was nothing fancy, just a 1-bedroom place with a tiny kitchen and a view of the canal, but it was mine. I bought furniture from charity shops and made it cozy. I also did something I'd always wanted to do but never had the confidence for. I quit my job at the dental practice and used part of the money to take a course in interior design. It was something I'd always been interested in but never thought I was good enough to pursue. Within 6 months I was working as a freelance interior designer. I started small, helping friends and neighbors redecorate their homes, but word spread quickly. I had a good eye for color and space, and I was good at working within people's budgets. Marcus tried to take me to court over the money, but his solicitor told him he didn't have a case. The money was in joint accounts, I'd contributed to it, and I hadn't taken anything that was solely his. He also tried to claim that I'd abandoned him and that he deserved some kind of compensation. That didn't go anywhere either. The divorce was finalized after 18 months. I didn't ask for anything from him and he couldn't ask for anything from me. We just went our separate ways. I heard through mutual friends that Marcus had to sell his grandmother's house because he couldn't afford the upkeep without my income. Apparently, he'd been living beyond his means for years and had been relying on my contributions more than he'd admitted. He moved into a small flat in Coventry and had to get a second job to make ends meet. I should have felt sorry for him, but I didn't. He'd made his choices. 2 years after the accident, I was running my own successful interior design business. I had a waiting list of clients and was making more money than I'd ever made in my life. I had my own flat, my own car, and my own life. I was also dating someone new. His name was James, and he was a teacher I'd met at a coffee shop in Harborne. When I told him about the accident and how Marcus had reacted, he was horrified. "He didn't come to the hospital?" James asked. "When you were hurt?" "Not for almost 24 hours. That's not normal, Charlotte. That's not how someone treats a person they love." It was the same thing Fiona had said, but hearing it from James made me realize how much I'd changed. 2 years ago I would have made excuses for Marcus. Now I knew exactly what I deserved from a relationship. James came with me to the hospital when I had to get my arm checked 6 months later. He sat with me during the appointment, asked the doctor questions, and bought me flowers afterward just because he wanted to make me smile. That's when I knew what real love looked like. The accident that almost killed me turned out to be the best thing that ever happened to me. It showed me who Marcus really was when I needed him most. It showed me what Fiona's friendship was worth. And it gave me the push I needed to take control of my own life. I'm 36 now and I've never been happier. I have my own business, my own home, and my own future. I have friends who would drop everything for me, and I would do the same for them. Most importantly, I learned that sometimes the worst thing that happens to you can be the thing that sets you free. Marcus never understood what he'd lost until it was too late. By the time he realized that he'd been married to someone who would have stood by him through anything, I was already gone. I don't regret taking the money. It was mine as much as his, and I used it to build a life I actually wanted instead of the life I thought I was supposed to have. Sometimes people ask me if I miss being married. I tell them I miss being married to the person I thought Marcus was, but that person never really existed. The real Marcus was the man who couldn't be bothered to come to the hospital when his wife was hurt. The real Marcus was the man who saw his wife as a convenient housekeeper and financial contributor, not as a partner. I'm glad I found that out before I wasted any more years on him. The accident taught me that life is short and unpredictable. You never know when everything might change in an instant. The important thing is to make sure you're living the life you actually want, not the life you think you're supposed to want. I'm living the life I want now. And I'm never going back to settling for less than I deserve.